Round one of the 2023 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs is now complete, so we're first going to take a look back at my round one predictions, see how we made out. Then we're going to analyze round two and make some new predictions going forward. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, back to making some predictions. Round two of the Stanley Cup playoffs is about to begin this evening. We have two games getting underway. We have first the Maple Leafs and the Panthers getting started with the first game tonight, followed by the Dallas Stars and the Seattle Kraken in the later affair. So obviously, we're not going to be spoiled anymore with 3-4 games a day. We're looking at mostly two for the most part, occasionally be one going forward once we get the full schedule towards the end of this round. Before we get into the round two predictions, I want to take a look at what we did for predictions here in round one and see how we made out. Obviously, for those of you that joined, we do have a bracket challenge through NHL.com for the channel for Top Shelf Hockey viewers if you want to participate. So we'll show you my bracket here, and we'll take a look through of what I get right and what I get wrong. So I did a little bit better in the Western Conference. In the Western Conference, I had the 3 out of 4 teams picked correctly. Didn't always pick the right number of games in all cases, but that's not the more difficult part is to me is picking the right team. Obviously now we picked Dallas to beat Minnesota. I picked Vegas to beat Winnipeg, and I predicted Edmonton to take out the Los Angeles Kings. Now I never would have predicted Seattle to take out the Colorado Avalanche. I'm sure there's the odd person that did, but for the most part, I would imagine that's not a very common prediction amongst those who did the bracket challenge or made predictions in any other way. Obviously, like I said, 3 out of 4 in the West. I felt pretty good to Colorado pulling it out. Thought that I would be 4 for 4, but the Kraken upset the Avalanche, and well, here we are. So obviously that sets up our Western Conference second round matchups, being the Stars against the Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, over in the Eastern Conference, I did predict Boston to take out Florida. I did not expect the record-breaking regular season Bruins to fall in 7 games to the Florida Panthers after having a 3-1 series lead at that. And then in games 5, 6, and 7, they held multiple leads and still managed to collapse and blow it. I'm not really sure on how we can explain what happened there in being down, but certainly not a good result. And again, I don't know that was a real common prediction. I'm sure there was probably some that predicted Florida to win the series, but I would imagine that's probably in the minority. At least I would think so. I did predict Toronto to beat Tampa. I thought it would take 7 games. Toronto was able to get through that series in 6, which is a monumental feat for them, considering it's the first time they got through round 1 in 19 years. So I know Leaf fans are over the moon excited. Demons have been exercised to get through the first round. And now we'll see, can they keep it going, or will they have a new stumbling point, or how far can they go? We'll find out here in due time. I also predicted the Carolina Hurricanes to beat the New York Islanders, and we also predicted the Rangers to beat the Devils, which was not the case. So I ended up going 2 for 4 in the Eastern Conference. Like I said, I was shocked that the Bruins collapsed the way they did. I was confident in my picks for Toronto and Carolina. I thought the Devils and Rangers series would go to be a long series. I just thought after all the additions the Rangers made at the deadline, they've added Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, Tyler Mott, Nico Mikkola. I just really thought that they were going to be a little bit too much for the inexperienced Devils. I mean, the Devils, though, were not fazed by the amount of experience, both recent Ranger players and new additions there to what they were facing, and they got the job done. So did I underestimate New Jersey? I guess I probably did a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's I think most people that I know pick the Rangers more than New Jersey, but they proved us wrong, which is good for them. They ended up upstart Devils at a real solid 7-game series victory, putting up a shutout for Mikura Schmidt in Game 7. So that goalie change seemed to be probably the turning point of the series for sure. So in the East, I got 2 out of 4 correct with the Toronto and Carolina predictions, whereas Boston and the Rangers picks turned out to be wrong. So that sets us up to have the Maple Leafs against the Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes now against the New Jersey Devils. So let's now take a look at some round 2 predictions. We're going to take a quick look at some of their playoff stats so far. I don't really know that it's overly important to look back at their regular season series. A lot has changed for most of these teams since those regular season games were played, and I think it's more important to look at the more recent result from how they've done in the first round, and based on their playoff performance so far, how these kind of teams tend to match up. Starting in the East with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Of course, the Leafs get through their first round in 6 games, so they have a 4-2 record, whereas Florida has a 4-3 record, but of course, 3 consecutive wins against the Boston Bruins. Of course, 2 out of 3 of those in Boston's arena. So that's, these guys are not afraid. They're not intimidated. And the Panthers are certainly an upstart team that Toronto has to take very, very seriously. I do think this could be a very entertaining series. Like I said, I know the regular season games are not overly going to throw a lot of weight here, but they did have some really good regular season content. So if that was any early indication of what this series could be like, plus what we've seen from both of them in round 1, I think it could be a very fun series, and it could be a very tight, long series as well. I think there's a potential it could go at least 6, if not 7 games. Comparing the two teams on the power play, very much comparable. The Leafs have a slight edge. They're running so far at the end of round 1 at 28.6%, and the Panthers are 25%. So the Maple Leafs have the 6th best power play in the playoffs in round 1, where the Panthers were 7th. So not a huge deal of difference there. Like I said, slight edge to the Maple Leafs. But penalty killing is what is a big problem for Florida. Toronto, not like they were absolutely killing it, but they certainly had a much better result, 76.2 for 9th best, and Florida was at 59% for 14th best. So neither one of those numbers are good, but I'm certainly a lot more concerned about 59% as compared to the 76%. But considering how good each power play was performing in the round 1, I would say that both of the PK teams are going to have their challenges, and that either team is going to have to remain disciplined if they want to win the special teams part of the series, which is, we know in playoffs, is absolutely crucial. It's huge in determining which team comes out on top. I will give a special teams advantage here to the Maple Leafs. Clearly, they have a slightly better power play and a much better penalty kill, even though neither penalty kill was, exactly letting it up and on fire by any means necessary there. But Toronto definitely outperformed Florida, no doubt about it. So that's going to be tough for the Panthers to overcome. Looking at the goaltenders, we'll look at Bobrovsky, who I would imagine at this point will be expected to start, who has played the last 4 contests with a 3-1 record. He only had a 394 goals against and an 891 save percentage, so it's not like he was really that phenomenal. Yes, he made some big saves. Yes, he kept his team in it, but you have to think that the high-powered offense from the Bruins, they were getting through, and the Panthers were having to score in bunches to get the job done as well. So I would think that that could be a problem for Florida. I do think they're susceptible to giving up a lot, and they're going to have to score a lot to make up for it. And that's just how they're constructed as a team. And as much as Bobrovsky has played well, he's going to have to up his game further if they're really going to be able to beat the Maple Leafs. Now, I guess one thing that probably concerns Leaf fans a little bit is obviously some of the bigger results we've seen in most recent playoff history in the last number of years. Look at the big upset we've seen in the bubble. Columbus Blue Jackets taking out the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was Sergei Bobrovsky in that helped shut them down, and when Columbus beat Toronto. And then, of course, Bobrovsky again takes out the Boston Bruins this year as part of the Florida Panthers. So certainly, a case of Bobrovsky being part of some of the bigger upsets in the more recent NHL playoff history. So, he can certainly get his game on. He's a former Vezina Trophy-winning goalie who earned himself a big-ass contract. And clearly, a case with the Florida Panthers, oftentimes feel like they're probably overpaying him. They don't seem to stick with him consistently. But if he's getting it done when it matters most and obviously facing these high-pressure situations, that's obviously a situation that he's been doing well. But if you look at his numbers, Samsonov is certainly outperforming him. Samsonov has a 314 goals against and a 900 save percentage, which again is not exactly phenomenal by NHL standards, but it's a lot better than Bobrovsky's numbers. So you have to think that overall we have a bit of an edge in goal here between the Leafs and Panthers going towards Toronto. But at the same time, for the most part, Joseph Woll has been backing up Samsonov, who's a rookie, very inexperienced. They do have Matt Murray, who's now healthy and available, but for right now, at least we'll see if anything changes in this Florida series. But he's been in number 3. They may want to have Murray as the backup. I mean, say what you want about him. Yes, he's been inconsistent. Yes, he gets hurt a lot, but he's had a couple of Stanley Cup rings on his resume. and lots of playoff experience. So if they had to turn to somebody other than Sammy, if he happens to get injured or something, they might want to consider Murray, even though Wall has been the better goalie as of late. But that's not my decision. That'll be for Sheldon Keefe. We'll see. My big concerns here, though, for Florida is the left side of their D-core. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs and their high-powered offense will be able to manipulate that and, obviously get lots of pucks on that and lots of scoring chances. The left side of their D-core of Gustav Forsling, Mark Stahl, and Josh Mahura, to me, is just not nearly good enough. The right side's a little bit stronger, obviously, with Ekblad and Brandon Montour and Radko Gudas. Montour's been tearing it up offensively in these playoffs. Comparable level to Morgan Riley for Toronto. But the left side of the blue line for Florida is a concern. I think the Maple Leafs do have a better balance on the back end. So that to me is an edge to the Leafs. I think we have a slight edge to the Leafs in goaltending. Les Bobrovsky takes it up to another, old Bobrovsky level from, 5+ years ago. The other thing I think will be a tough time, though, for the Leafs as well on their decor. We'll have a hard time with the Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk line. Those guys are going to crash and bang and disturb you and drive you crazy, and it's going to be up to the Maple Leafs to stay disciplined, to not take penalties. Those guys can draw lots of penalties. They can get lots of physicality, forecheck going, and then, drive some offense, especially when you put Carter Verhaeghe on that line, which is quite common. You've got three guys who can all score and all, different types of players, but Bennett and Tkachuk especially are the tougher to play against, drive you crazy kind of guys. So to me, I think that'll be a handful for the Leafs. I think the Maple Leafs can survive. If I'm giving them a slight edge in goal, I'm giving them an edge on the blue line. And as much as Florida's top six has performed well, and I know I've heard some people say they're fairly comparable to the Leafs, I don't think it's quite that close. The Maple Leafs top six is definitely a case of, I think, being a higher power offense than Florida. But Florida does have some good offensive players. They're not a slouch by any means, but I do give the edge to Toronto. If you look at the bottom six players, again, I think the Maple Leafs are constructed a little bit better, a little bit more experience with having guys like O'Reilly and Kerfoot and David Camp, etc. on your third line. And then, of course, you still have, other fourth line players in there. I think they have a better bottom six too. Michael Bunting could be a wild card if he can keep his cool and stay disciplined. That would be good for Toronto, but again, the Panthers have a wicked power play. If they lose their cool, then the Panthers can make them pay. But I am going to predict the Leafs in 7 in this series, and I think they can get through, but it's not going to be an easy task. New Jersey and Carolina, I think this one's going to be a little bit less of an entertainment value. I think it's going to be really tight checking, and I think it could be very low scoring. Carolina Hurricanes are going to rely heavily on strong defense and goaltending to try to win. The Devils, of course, just came through a 7-game series with the Rangers, where the Hurricanes were able to wrap up the Islanders in 6. On a power play perspective, Carolina has the edge with a 20% conversion rate, which is 9th best in the power and the playoff, and the Devils had 16.7, which is only 13th best. So neither power play is exactly letting it on fire, but Carolina definitely has an edge. PK-wise, Carolina is the best in the playoffs so far, over 94%. On a PK, the Devils are at 82%, which is still really good, but it's not 94%. The Carolina Hurricanes give up very little, but at the same time, you got to remember that the Islanders' power play really struggled, and it was certainly a weak part for them. Now, the Devils, on the other hand, are not exactly letting it up either. The Rangers were able to contain them, so that could be a major special teams edge for the Carolina Hurricanes, which is going to come in handy. From a goalie perspective, though, Akira Schmid is the story here. He's at a 4-1 record, a 1.38 goals against, and a 951 save percentage. That's absolutely phenomenal, whereas the Hurricanes have run with 2 goalies, with Ranta playing the bulk of the games as a 3-2 record, with a 2.59 goals against and a 906 save percentage, which is pretty good. But then you got Freddie Anderson, only played the 1 game, but he only gave up less than a goal. So he got a 0.91 goals against average, because obviously the goal came in regulation. The game went to overtime, so it was more than 60 minutes to play there, and a 971 save percentage. Obviously, if Freddie can keep that up, it's going to be a big-time goaltender duel, and we'll see. But right now, I would say Schmid has the edge because he's done it for a bigger sample size. My big concerns for Carolina, though, is going to be their lack of scoring. Of course, they never really got Pacioretty going this year because of the injuries. They lost Svechnikov, Teravainen. I think they're depleted to the point that they're going to have to rely on, obviously, not only Sebastian Aho, but guys like Natchez and Jarvis, etc. And they do have some offensive, skills. There's no doubt. But given the ability of Schmid and the way he's played in these playoffs, I am concerned over Carolina's ability to get a whole lot of offense and scoring on the board. Whereas New Jersey, I guess even though they got through a round, you gotta still be wondering a little bit. Carolina's been a playoff team for a number of years consecutively now, and they've had some deep runs to the conference final. They've got lots of playoff experience the last few years, whereas New Jersey's still a little bit raw. They got through one round, yes, but most of those guys, that was their first playoff series. So still a little bit green on that side of things. So the concern is still from an experience standpoint, but overall, you really got to think that, and against the Rangers, it wasn't a concern. Sometimes, these young players need to play through it and learn as they go, and they've certainly proven that they can do that. So obviously they're going to need good balanced scoring. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to suffocate you with their forecheck, and they're certainly strong on the decor. They have one of the better blue lines in the NHL. So it's going to be challenging for either team to get their offense going. I think I'll give an edge offensively to the Devils just because they're not missing any of their key weapons. They're certainly, healthy that way and able to produce. Goaltending is going to be really tight, and I am going to give a slight edge to New Jersey, and I'm going to predict them to beat Carolina, and I think it's going to go 7 games yet again. And the reason I predict this is that I think Akira Schmid is going to continue to be the story of the playoffs, taking down a not overly offensive team in Carolina. That's my concern, was their lack of finish and lack of scoring, and I think you combine that with a hot goalie, and unless something changes in that series and the Schmid doesn't play up to those standards, Carolina's going to have a real tough time getting through the Devils, in my opinion. Now in the West, we have Dallas against Seattle. Of course, Dallas wrapped up their series in 6 games, where Seattle took 7. Looking at the power play, major advantage for the Dallas Stars. Dallas had a 37.5% success rate, which was 4th best in the playoffs, where the Kraken were pretty low, only 14%. The PK, on the other hand, a really solid job from the Kraken, 88.9%, which is 2nd best. But the Stars had a good result as well, 81.8%. So, yes, the Kraken have a slight edge on the PK, but the Stars are no slouch, and there's a major difference there on the power play. So I will say that the Dallas Stars, I think, do have a special teams advantage in that case. Obviously, when it comes to the Seattle Kraken PK, the Avalanche team that they were playing, they're obviously very high powered, but there's one game where there's no Cale Makar due to suspension, and the Avalanche are certainly depleted as well. So, they're dealing with a lot of injuries there, and the power play was not, fully staffed like it normally would be, which did make things, I'm sure, a little bit easier. The Dallas Stars are also one of the top, actually the number 1 face-off team so far in the playoffs, and the Kraken are near the bottom. So, to me, the Dallas Stars are going to quite often be winning a lot of those draws and starting with the puck more, which will also give them a major advantage, especially when it comes to starting on the power play or offensive zone face-off. So to me, Dallas, I think, is going to have a much easier time offensively, and I think they're going to have a special teams advantage. Now, if you look at the goaltending, Philip Grubauer certainly shut down his old team, the Avalanche, and they took him out in 7 games. So he's got a 4-3 record, put up a 2.44 goals against, and a .926 save percentage, which is really, really good. However, Jake Ottinger really went up to him and has a 4-2 record and only goals against of 201 and a .929, so his results are even better. The way Ottinger has played so far in the first round of this year and what he showed last year, I do have to give Ottinger an edge in this one. Also, I'll say, Dallas has an edge in goaltending. As much as Grubauer was really good, his regular seasons, the last couple, have not been great, where Ottinger has been a lot more consistent. So we had a bigger group of sample size there to go by for Ottinger, not only in the playoffs, but regular season. So I think personally that Ottinger will be able to outduel and outperform Philip Grubauer to give the Dallas Stars an edge in that case. Now, of course, Seattle has very limited, high-powered, offense. They have the scoring by committee, which is good in some ways, not so good in others. I mean, they do have to rely on a variety of players to be able to contribute in order to be successful. There's no doubt. Like, if you take a look at any given game, all 7 games, they got scoring from all different lines, all different forwards contributing to that. Now, obviously, with the Dallas Stars being a stronger defensive team, obviously having a really solid goaltending and Jake Ottinger, a special teams advantage, that might be problematic. Like, Seattle doesn't really have those top star elite level players to really lean on. Again, like New Jersey, an inexperienced team, at least as a group, they do have some people there that are, very well experienced in lots of playoffs. under their belts. Like, Yanni Gordon and his days in Tampa come to mind. Jordan Eberle's been around the NHL a long time. They do have players that have playoff experience, there's no doubt, but not as a group. This is their first time doing it. So to me, I think that's going to be a major advantage trending towards the Dallas Stars. We also don't know what the Jared McCann injury. Have not heard how long he's going to continue to be out. The longer he's out, the worse it is, because he's the one guy they do have that, even though he's not always recognized as an elite level player, he did play like it this year, putting out 40 goals, which was, quite an accomplishment. So can Philip Grubauer continue to keep it up? I have my concerns because we haven't seen a big enough sample size to say that he can. Or Jake Ottinger, we have. So to me, again, I think goaltending quite often makes a difference. I'm giving an advantage to Dallas. Power play and PK, advantage to Dallas. Experience, advantage to Dallas. I'm going to say the Dallas Stars beat the Kraken in maximum of 6 games. Our last series is the Oilers against the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, both teams wrapped up their series in round 1 with a 4-2 series win. Of course, the Oilers taking out the Kings, and of course, the Vegas Golden Knights taking out the Winnipeg Jets. I think the fair to say Vegas had a little bit of an easier time than Edmonton did. LA was a good matchup for the Oil, and this is going to be a very different style of series and different style of play for sure. Looking at the power play, the Oilers are on a record-breaking mode here. Their power play in the first round connected at over 56%, which is, absolutely ridiculous, whereas Vegas was at 18.8%. So, that's not awesome. It's not terrible either, but the Edmonton one is just out of this world. So clearly major advantage to the Edmonton Oilers. PK, though, neither team was good, but we can actually give an advantage to Edmonton, which is surprising considering how bad the result was. But the Oilers are only the 12th best PK team in the playoffs with a 66.7% success rate, but Vegas was even worse at 58.3%. So the Oilers should be able to absolutely feast on this Vegas power play, or penalty kill, considering how lethal their power play has been operating. So if I'm Vegas, you're going to have to beg on pretty much 1 out of every 2 penalties, and the puck's going into net, at least, if not more. So that's not a good scenario. I have to give a major advantage on special teams to the Oilers in that regard. Looking at the goalie, Stuart Skinner, and a 3-2 record. Jack Campbell did appear in 1 game. Skinner has a .343 goals against and an .890 save percentage, which is not really what you want for a team hoping to go on a deep playoff run. Laurent Brossoit in Vegas has a 4-1 record with a .242 save percentage, goals against, and a .915 save percentage. So you have to say that the Vegas goaltending has been a bit better. But, who had the tougher test and opponent in round 1? The Winnipeg Jets had their own issues with injuries and everything like that. You might want to argue that the Kings were by far a stronger team, and that, even though Skinner's numbers aren't as good, he had a much tougher opponent that he was facing. Either way, we'll give an advantage to Vegas here, but I think it's quite likely that we could see Edmonton close that gap based on, what we have to compare to in round 1. Now, obviously, like I said, we had don't want to put a lot of weight to the season series, but Edmonton did beat Vegas 3 out of 4 times in the regular season. I think the way that the teams are constructed, I think the Edmonton Oilers and their top players will have a lot more success against Vegas than they did against LA. Vegas will defend completely differently and have a different whole structured team. So obviously Bruce Cassidy, his first year as coach of Vegas, has done a good job. We'll see what happens. But I want to say that the Edmonton Oilers will be able to take out the Vegas Golden Knights in likely 6 games. It could go 7. But I personally just don't know if Vegas can stop McDavid, Draisaitl and company. So the power play is phenomenal. I think they can close the gap on goaltending. And 5-on-5 play will obviously dictate a lot as well. I mean, Vegas has got a really good team. They're no slouch. I think we're going to have at least a few games probably go to overtime. But it will be very different than the LA series for Edmonton. I think they'll be able to break through and get more goals on the board, which will allow them to be more successful. But Vegas is going to have a hard time with that Edmonton power play. Every time you go to the box, it's not quite a guarantee, but pretty close to it to be a goal again. So you want to avoid that at all costs. So those are my 4 predictions for round 2. I'm taking the Leafs, the Devils, the Stars, and the Oilers. So I would set up some pretty interesting conference finals. Let me know what your thoughts are in these 4 second-round series. Who are you picking to win? Let me know down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.